it all started here.
Me in 1999 after my Funny Island screensaver shows me horrors beyond human comprehension.
One of those memes that's not really meant to be funny as much as it's meant to be jarring and kind of disturbing. I had no idea what it was referring to, but something about this meme made me want to know more. Thankfully, I was able to find at least some of the answers I was looking for right away.
I see a lot of confused people in these comments, and it makes me feel old. So let me give a short history lesson here. I'm pretty sure this is referring to an old program called 3D Workers Island from around Y2K. Honestly, my memory of it is a little hazy, but I'm pretty sure it was just a simple screensaver. I do have vague memories of a few people back then with too much time on their hands who spread a bunch of rumors about it. Sort of like Herobrine before Herobrine, if I had to make a comparison.
This sounded really interesting. I have a soft spot for old tech like this, so naturally I wanted to know more. Since it had been 20 years, I figured it wouldn't be easy to get an actual copy of this program, so my hope was that someone had archived it somewhere so I could try it for myself. To my surprise, it turned out that this screensaver had a bunch of forums and message boards back in the day, and one of them was still around, and it even had a download link for the program that still worked. It had been over 2 decades, but 3D Workers Island was, by some miracle, still accessible. And this is the point where I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, and maybe, just maybe, it could turn into a really special video for all of you. Okay, so I've managed to find a really old forum for 3D Workers Island. I'm not sure who's still running this thing, or how the server's still going, because again, it's been like 20 years, and almost no one seems to know about this thing these days. But it's here, and it seems to be working. I set up a VM running Windows 98, so you can really get the same vibes of what it would have been like to look at this all those years ago. I wasn't really around for Windows 98. My first operating system was, I think, Windows XP for a little bit. I'm hoping that this is going to be as cool to look through as I think it's going to be. Some of the people watching might not be old enough to remember this, but screensavers used to be pretty elaborate. My old favorite were these classic pipes that would snake across the screen, but that was just one of the built-in ones. There were all kinds of other ones too that were made by random people across the world, and 3D Workers Island seems to have been one of the more sophisticated ones. It actually tells a sort of story. It's about 6 characters who all live on an island together, sharing one house and living a simple seaside life. Every time the screensaver starts, a new story with these characters unfolds, but according to the website, these events are never scripted. The program supposedly has such a sophisticated AI that it's able to make up these simple stories by itself, spontaneously. Obviously, for such an old program, I found it a little hard to believe that it would have such a complex AI, so to learn more, I tried to figure out who had made this program in the first place. I found nothing. Remember, this website is just meant to be a message board for the screensaver. They just found the program one day and decided to host it themselves, but they didn't make it. No one knows who did. It's just been spread around by different people for years, and the original source has been lost. But as weird as that was, there wasn't much else that I could find out from this website alone, so it was about time that I actually downloaded this thing and tried it out for myself. Even in the worst case scenario, if this was some kind of virus, since it was running on a virtual machine and not my actual computer, it would still be safe to tinker with. Normally one of these screensavers would only show up when you let the computer sit idle for a few minutes, but you can also preview it at any time. And that's what I did right after installing it. Sure enough, the program seems to do exactly what it says it does. Every time I open it up, it introduces all 6 characters: Pat, Rebecca, Joe, Amber, Holland, and Grace, and then random events start to happen on the tiny island. The cool thing is that no matter how many times I restart it, the same event never happens twice. For such a small program, the versatility of it is really incredible. But that being said, it is still a screensaver, and my mind quickly wandered back to that one meme that started this whole thing. Nothing here seems to warrant such a reaction, so I dug a little deeper on the website and started reading through the 20-year-old messages I found there. Okay, update. I'm looking through these old forums. It's kind of cool because it's like a time capsule from, not that long ago, but a couple decades. In internet times, that's like a really long time. But I'm mostly hoping that I can actually find something that's going to be, interesting for some kind of video that I can make with this. But so far it's been a whole lot of just people gushing about this screensaver, a lot. It's a lot of people just saying how cool this program is without much deeper going beyond that. So I don't know. I'm scrolling through. I'm trying to find something better, and we'll see if I can pick something out that looks cool. I did eventually find some weirder posts. The people are like real people you're watching, and you never know what's going to happen next. I've seen dancing and squirming, the baffling games they play with objects, the awkward intimacy that looks like hugging sometimes and other times looks, pornographic, frankly. Personally, I haven't seen anything like that. The scenes do get pretty elaborate, though, and sometimes you'll have all 6 characters outside of the house at once, all doing their own thing. Like here, where Rebecca is barbecuing, Amber is eating, Holland has her own little toy thing. For such a small program, I do have to admit that the way this is all coordinated makes it really clever, especially for the time. There's even changes to the very camera that we viewed the island from. Sometimes there'll be close-ups to really hone in on one particular thing that's happening. Even with that, though, sometimes it's hard to interpret what you're seeing on screen. Like this part, where Holland eats a burger while Pat seems to almost be talking to Amber about something, though obviously we don't hear anything. They don't even have faces, so there's no emotions to read either. It's weird that it's called 3D Workers Island when we don't actually see much work being done. It could easily have been called 3D People's Island or something more generic like that. I'm not the only person to notice this either. Even 20 years ago, other users on these forums were saying the same thing. But not everyone agreed. There was one user, P. Lawler, who we'll be seeing a lot of here. She's actually the creator of the website that we downloaded the program from in the first place, and even though she didn't make the program, she seems to know a lot about it. Funnily enough, she also shares the name with one of the characters, Pat. She has some things to say about the laziness of the people on the island. As she puts it, some people have worked hard enough in their lives and deserve a rest already. I do feel a twinge of annoyance when I see a character like Amber sitting around. I want to tell her, hey, you're young, do something. So I wasn't planning on doing another one of these update video things until I found something a little more concrete to share. And this doesn't really count. It's not really like clear evidence of what people are talking about when they talk about the screensaver and the weirdness of it or whatever. But it's weird enough that I want to mention it. A lot of people are just saying, this screensaver is fun and it's cool and I like the characters, even though the characters don't really say much of anything. And then eventually, I saw this post from someone named Ned Hucker, and it's just weird. It's just weird. I'll read it to you. I'll literally read it to you right now. I don't know if you can see that.
Be cool, and things will be shown to you. Personally, I love this screensaver. It's so f***ed up.
Okay. yeah, that's what I think of when I think of this. No one seems to know where this program came from. You can download it from this website that I have right here, but that's not the original source, and they make it very clear that that's not the original source when you go to this website. It is something called 3D Screensavers Palace. Now again, that was 20 years ago, so I didn't know if that was still around. Guess what? It is. It is still around, and it still looks like it's ancient. Yeah, here we go. So, 3D Screensavers Palace. Looks old. But here it is. And it's got these different screensavers. This one's kind of cool. It's like a cave that you can, explore around in or whatever. But the weird thing is, this does still have 3D Workers Island in it. 3D Workers Island, there's no picture for this one. 6,000 downloads. Modest, I guess. And it's a very short sentence saying what it is. It's very, non-descriptive. So again, it's a dead end, and it's a little weird. The more you watch this screensaver, the more you start to notice that these characters do almost have personalities. For example, after P. Lawler mentioned Amber being lazy, I started to pay more close attention to Amber to see if that was true. And yet, in my opinion, Amber does more work than most of the other characters on the island. For example, here she is mowing the lawn, and here she is with some kind of wheelbarrow full of red balls, maybe they're tomatoes. How deep do these personalities go? How advanced is the AI behind this ancient piece of software? Whatever the answer to that question is, my computer does seem to start chugging whenever I run it. According to the forum website, the program will use whatever resources are provided to it. You will notice that the island is quiet. It does not play audio. The significance of this silence is considerable. It allows the island to disappear. Despite its heft, it's also light. There's a sense of ghostly transience, that none of it is really happening, and it can all vanish with the flick of a mouse. I'm not sure what I expected this to be, but it is starting to bother me a little bit. You don't really see the characters talk to each other or anything, obviously, but you can kind of get the sense that there is some kind of relationships between them, to some vague extent. I don't know, they're not always happy relationships either. And if you ask me to point to any specific piece of evidence, I don't know what I would show you, because it's all very vague, it's all very To an extent, it's kind of up to your interpretation. But I don't know, I get this impression. There's this event that happened after the screensaver was running for a while where Amber and Holland are playing together in the sand, and Holland just gets up to leave. And Amber stays there, all alone, and just stares at the ground. I know it's not really much of anything, but it still gave me the impression that there's some kind of friction here between the characters. And the weird thing is that while you never see the exact same event more than once, sometimes you'll see two different ones that feel similar. Like, not long after that last one, where Holland ran inside and Amber looked almost sad, the same thing happened again. Mind you, the camera is in a different spot, farther away, but that really doesn't change what's actually happening on screen. Amber almost looks like she's crying this time. The coolest part of these old forums is that they give you a snippet of not just the characters on the island, but the real people who frequented this website 20 years ago. One user mentions that as a school project, his son has been making a real-world model of the island, and this user has been helping to put it together. The photos don't seem to exist online anymore, but I wish I could have seen them. It sounds like a really cool family project. You did a good job with the island. I have some advice. You should not do your son's work for him. Do not let him get used to the idea that you will do his assignments. Take it from a fellow parent.
My son doesn't like 3D Workers Island one bit. It scares him, and he makes me turn it off.
Okay, it's getting to the point now where I'm starting to actually notice some stuff in here, like the things that people have been kind of vaguely talking about. So just as an example, the reason that I'm recording this right now is because there's this scene on screen, and it's the characters, and you can see Amber there, and the camera's all zoomed in. And I swear, for 2-3 minutes before this, there was it was just this wall of the house, and there was just nothing going on. But now there's actually, you can kind of see Amber there. But the weird thing is, the screensaver never goes more than 10-15 seconds before something happens, even on a slow scene or whatever. But I was staring at this for a good 2-3 minutes before any of them showed up. Already, that's pretty weird. And then it almost looks like you can see, I don't know. They don't say anything, so it's hard to say for sure. But it almost looks like Pat's kind of berating Amber. Again, I know it's nothing to go off of. It's just a little too real, Some of the people on these old forums seem genuinely obsessed. One user named Good Kid mentions being in detention in their school's computer lab and putting the program on every machine, and seeing a different, unique island on every computer. Then they go on a bit of a tangent and mention how they were mostly in detention for dress code violations, as well as inventing a fake skin disease, apparently. Maybe stuff like this is part of the reason why this program feels so weird to me. Hearing random people from decades ago talk about horrific skin diseases is kind of creepy, and maybe that sense of unease is why 3D Workers Island creeps me out so much in general. Okay, I'll bite. Tell me about cutilacune.
I'm glad you asked. Cutilacune, skin disease with 4 stages. Stage 0, redness and sensitivity. Stage 1, skin gaps. Holes or gaps of various sizes, exposing dermis. Stage 2, skin islands. Widespread loss of epidermis, leaving only a number of skin islands of various sizes. Stage 3, recession of the islands, leading to complete loss of epidermis. Early stages can be treated and reversed, but stage 3 is irreversible. Stages 1, 2, and 3 are consistently rated 10 on the 1 to 10 scale. Screaming and hair pulling and despair.
The internet was a lot less sanitary back then, and these bizarre posts show that clear as day. It feels out of place in a forum where people were otherwise just talking about wholesome things like their favorite characters. Which, by the way, is overwhelmingly Amber, by a landslide. People seem to love Amber, which is understandable. I even found myself getting kind of endeared to her as I watched her walk around the island doing her various tasks. But even when talking about something as wholesome as this, the eeriness I've been feeling this whole time doesn't go away.
If I had to choose a favorite... tough one. Just kidding. It's Amber. F*** everyone else.
I'm offended that the question is even being posed. But I understand. You don't know any better. You're better off this way.
I know we're not supposed to talk about those topics here, but can we at least be honest when it comes to questions like this? I'm not going to pretend my favorite character is Holland or Grace or somebody else, just so things can stay clean on this forum.
Can somebody fill me in on the joke here? What's wrong with the other characters?
I felt like the forum wasn't really helping me learn more about this program, so I checked other parts of the website. There's one labeled links. While most of the stuff there isn't too helpful, I did find this. Computer philosophy. It's really bizarre.
It's about how windows connect us between realities. At least, I think that's what it's about. The grammar is really clunky, like it was written by someone who only was just learning English. And there isn't even an author listed. I have no idea who wrote this or why it's linked on the 3D Workers Island website. There are windows everywhere we see them, and anyone could be looking in at you. That's a part of what makes them scary. But windows are even scarier when you're the one who looks in them, because of when you never know what you'll see in them. What happens when something bad you find responsible for is there, and you do nothing to stop it, because it looks through a window and is not real. Again, kind of broken English, but very weird, either way. At this point, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I want to find answers, but nothing is out there. It feels like all these people from so long ago know something that I don't, and they aren't telling. So I go all the way back to the start of this journey, to the one person who I know still remembers this thing, and might be able to tell me more about the secrets it's hiding.
I don't remember seeing that much weird stuff about 3D Workers Island back in the day, but I do remember having some weird conversation about it. There was this one time where I was with my cousin for Thanksgiving or something, and it got late, and he took me down a dark trail and scared the piss out of me, talking about ghosts and murderers and stuff. I wanted to change the subject, so I literally just started talking about whatever random thing I could think of, and that ended up being the island. Weird thing was, he already knew about it. Kind of caught me off guard. And he kept talking with the same exact tone as when he was talking about serial killers and stuff, but how about this island? Obviously this was a long time ago, so I don't remember everything, but he was going on about one of the characters, the one in the pink shirt. Started ranting about things he had noticed in the screensaver.
When you say the character in the pink shirt, do you think he was talking about Amber?
Oh yeah, Amber, that's the one. Sorry, I couldn't remember her name for the life of me. I don't know how I forgot. Amber was definitely the most popular character back in the day. It actually kind of got out of hand. I remember there was a bunch of Amber fans that basically ended up taking down the forums back in the day, at least for a little while. That's how much of a nuisance they were. Ruined a good thing. Of course, they brought the website back eventually, once things had calmed down, but it was annoying while it lasted. I only really remember one other thing from that night. I remember my cousin and I went back after talking, and we actually started up the screensaver and watched it until 2 in the morning on the slowest, crappiest computer in the world. And the computer froze at one point, which I didn't think was very weird because, again, it was kind of a clunky machine in the first place, but then he started going off about how it really wasn't frozen. And he said that the program actually does it on purpose to hide things that are happening. I haven't really talked to him in a while.
You all didn't believe me, but look who's laughing now! Ha ha! I found it. I found a breakthrough. So, again, I've been looking through these forum posts for ages. It's very mind-numbing, but I found something. So, there's someone else on this forum who is just as confused as I am, asking hey, I've heard a lot of people saying weird things are going on in this screensaver. Can anyone fill me in? Obviously, they're saying more than that, but I'm paraphrasing, And everyone is responding with they're saying, turn back, no, stop, big stop sign, go back, don't. This particular one is interesting. Don't become another one of us freaks. Stop this line of inquiry now and do something else. It's okay, cool. This is, again, I think it's a bit of role playing, but it's a little weird. And then where is it? Hang on. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is the breakthrough. Someone actually sends a link to it, and you'll notice that's really exciting. But the link is gone. Link removed by P. Lawler, the mod and the creator of this site, and the one who's been hosting the download for it that I was able to get to in the first place. So you might think, okay, well, it's a dead end. What's the big deal? The link is gone. Oh well. Can't go anywhere from there. But this user also posted the link on their profile, and it was never removed off their profile. It's been years, and it's still there. And that link takes you to this website. It's another basic, empty website called Inside 3D Workers Island, with nothing but a picture of the house on the island and a block of text.
My brother crashes here. He sleeps on the couch. Sometimes we sit together, looking out those windows, and tell stories about the house beyond my backyard. A man lives in that house with his 2 sons. The curtains are closed, and we imagine our own childhood replaying itself behind them. But there's no point in worrying about those children based on feelings and intuition alone. Still, we both find that our dreams become more vivid with time. Recently, I downloaded 3D Workers Island. When it starts, you're on an island. There are people around, but they don't do much. Not when they're outside, anyway. Naturally, you wonder what they might be doing inside the windowless red house in the background. That's when things start to go wrong. When you start wondering that, the reality is always worse than you think it is. No matter how much you learn, it's always worse. And the only escape is to stop asking, to stop digging, to stop learning. This is your chance to stop.
Inside 3D Workers Island goes on to explain how the forum we've been looking at, the one run by Pat Lawler, is the normal, reasonable website to explore if you're interested in 3D Workers Island. But this one goes deeper. It also apparently has themes of violent abuse and torture. And in fact, I think I've heard of this website before. Like many forums, the one for 3D Workers Island has a list of rules, and most of them are pretty normal, but Rule 5 stands out. Do not post links to the website. You know the one. This must be talking about inside 3D Workers Island. I mean, what else would it be referring to? According to Pat, the website has a bunch of stories told by kids to scare other kids. Nothing more.
Those violent stories are cheesy and over the top. Blood and guts. Believe me, I've been watching this program for so long, I would have seen things by now.
You'd love to think it's just bloody screaming children. Long before I began seeing the violent shit, I saw the way Amber was treated by the other islanders. I saw her tiredness, I saw her subtle messages, but you just point at the bleeding children and laugh. Alright then.
Why is it always Amber who gets abused and killed in these made-up scenarios? Don't get why this community has an obsession with torturing her specifically. You're all freaks and sociopaths is my best guess. Well, we're in too deep now. Let's take a look at inside 3D Workers Island. The first thing that catches my eye is all the categories on the left here. Hidden messages, photographs, screams, whispers, glitches, oddities. I don't actually know how much I want to see of this. Especially those screams and whispers. 3D Workers Island is supposed to be silent. It has always been silent. What kinds of screams could this be referring to? This website is full of incredible detail. It mentions things that no one else has talked about. Apparently, the claim that no single event in 3D Workers Island can ever happen twice is a lie. Specifically, there's an event called a PJR pin. Here's what it looks like. The three characters, Pat, Joe, and Rebecca, will all surround Amber. She will not be able to escape. All four characters suddenly disappear. The screen freezes and goes black. All of a sudden, a photo appears. It's a child. It looks like Amber. Sometimes she's injured. Sometimes screams play from the speakers. All of a sudden, the island reappears. Pat, Joe, and Rebecca walk out of the house one by one. Then Amber follows.
Pat Lawler is a criminal. I have a family who used to live down the street from her. Nobody in their right mind would trust Pat Lawler. Pat Lawler shouldn't be allowed to run a 3D Workers Island fan website. She should be in prison.
Whether you choose to believe that post or not, the user who posted it was immediately banned by Pat. Apparently, Pat is always online. She reads every post the second you submit it. You cannot evade her. It's like all she does is browse these forums. Like she's much too invested in 3D Workers Island to do anything else. I don't have an explanation for the things I've seen here. It seems like some kind of abuse is happening inside this red house, and Amber is the victim. And even though many people seem to have known about it, they would be silenced by a person who never sleeps. A person who also seems to have a particular dislike for Amber. A person who has the exact same name as one of the island's characters. But the hardest thing for me to explain about all this is that even today, 20 years after the last post on these forums, Pat is still online. I've only ever seen one of the events mentioned on Inside 3D Workers Island for myself, and it wasn't the PJR pin. It was something called worker degeneration. It has a few different stages. It starts with Amber slowly becoming red. Every time she ducks out of view, inside the house or behind it, she comes out redder. After this, she all of a sudden transforms into a small red ball. The red ball does nothing but scream. Eventually, Amber respawns from the house, but even after this, the red ball still remains. Some users have reported leaving the screensaver on all day and coming back to find piles of these red balls scattered across the island. This whole thing almost feels kind of reminiscent of that skin disease from earlier, cuticulaceae. For me personally, I saw that wheelbarrow full of red balls dumped into the ocean, receding below the surface. From there, the camera slowly zoomed outward, eventually splitting into pieces and filling my screen with a sharp red hue. From there, every time I opened the screensaver, I saw the exact same red color. I actually tried reinstalling the screensaver to get the island to come back, but it was no use. I never saw the island again. In case you haven't realized it yet, 3D Workers Island does not exist. None of this actually exists. 3D Workers Island is a fake screensaver created by Tony Domenico in 2024. Tony is best known for creating the popular YouTube series Petscop, which has a lot of similarities with this series. For one thing, Petscop's about a fake video game, similarly to how 3D Workers Island is about a fake screensaver. The actual story of 3D Workers Island is told through fake screenshots of this screensaver and other websites and programs on an old Windows 98 environment. In total, there's about 300 different pictures that you can scroll through in a sort of slideshow. It feels very retro, and this feeling of unearthing hidden digital memories from decades ago only adds to the uneasiness, like it did for Petscop. I won't be going too in-depth on Petscop in this video because that's already been done 1,000 times, but I will take some time now to explain what I think this story means. It should be clear already that 3D Workers Island is a story of abuse towards Amber. While the island is usually full of normal, mundane events that its characters partake in, every now and then something will happen that is a little harder to interpret, and the longer you watch the screensaver for, the more you can piece together its story. Let's talk about Pat. We can figure out Pat's personality through her interactions with the other characters. First, Amber. Pat is the main abuser of Amber. Not the only one, Joe and Rebecca also seem to be involved, but the main one. We catch glimpses of this abuse a few times, and the things we hear about on the forums only provide more evidence for it. Also, we see many examples of Pat putting Amber to work. Amber can be seen mowing the grass, using the wheelbarrow, and is never seen playing or at rest nearly as much as the other characters are. Obviously, a child doing tasks around the yard isn't some type of horrible abuse, but the way it contrasts with the other characters does show that she is treated differently, even when we're watching. How she might be treated when we're not watching is another question entirely. Also, that second website we found, Inside 3D Workers Island, the one about all the screensaver's dark secrets that Pat Lawler tries so desperately to hide, remember that the entrance page for that website is a story about the website's owner and her brother, and how they have a habit of looking at the house next door and wondering about the abuse that might be happening there too. A clear parallel to the house on the island and the way Amber is treated there. Pat's interactions with Amber seem harsh, but her interactions with the only other child on the island, Holland, are much more amicable. Holland never has to do the same amount of work that Amber does, and is usually seen around the island playing with her doll or lounging around. The one other character we should mention in relation to Pat is Rebecca. Rebecca doesn't do much, but we do see her and Pat in this bizarre scene where their character models are clipping through each other, which could imply any number of things. These are the three characters Pat interacts with most, and I think we can figure out a lot about what's going on here by examining the link between all four of them. And to do that, we have to go back to the forums, specifically to Pat Lawler. Obviously, Pat Lawler shares a name with the Pat character in the screensaver. Not only that, but she mentions having 2 daughters. And what do you know? In 3D Workers Island, only 2 characters seem to be children, both of them being girls, and we've already mentioned the different ways that Pat interacts with them. Furthermore, the real-world Pat seems to feel the same way about Amber that the digital Pat does. She calls Amber lazy, and while these feelings never turn into all-out rage, they are still overwhelmingly negative every time she mentions her. She also downplays all the terrible things the other users say they have seen in regards to Amber, and belittles anyone who tries to insinuate that Amber might be being mistreated within the screensaver. And don't forget that other user who mentioned that Pat was a criminal and has done something horrible in the past. Maybe this is referring to abuse involving her own daughter. This would line up with the types of abuse the digital Pat seems to be capable of. Pat also mentions being attracted to the Rebecca character, which could also line up with the scene I just mentioned where their models were clipping through each other in a bizarre way. I think we can confidently say that the real-world Pat and the digital Pat are connected somehow, but I would go even further. I would actually argue that they are the same person. Sort of. Close to the end of 3D Workers Island, a user on the forum mentions how Pat is always online, and seems to read every post seconds after it's posted. Immediately after this, we see the screensaver again, and Pat is there, by the picnic table, on a computer with a globe on the screen. Obviously, globes have represented the internet for a long time, and that seems to be what it means here as well. This scene and its placement in the story suggests that the digital Pat is the one writing these posts on the forum. Besides, it couldn't be the real Pat. No real person can stay awake 24/7, so it has to be some kind of digital entity either way. The digital Pat just makes the most sense. Her AI must be so advanced that she's capable of interacting with real people, and if you think that's crazy, I have more evidence for it. Do you remember that weird computer philosophy page that we saw? The one that was going on about windows and reality in very broken English? The point it was trying to get across was that there are windows that separate us in the real world from the things inside our screens. But what if something can go through those windows to the other side? The point is made very clearly at the bottom of the page, where we see a diagram of objects on the inside of the screen making their way outside. And remember, there are apparently photos of a very real amber that can be found inside 3D Workers Island that several users have seen. It seems that not only is Pat real, but Amber is too, and probably all the other characters we see here. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that the characters in 3D Workers Island somehow found a way into the real world. That might be what's happening here, but I think there's an easier explanation. I think it's much more likely that there was a real-world Pat, who had 2 real-world children, and that the characters in 3D Workers Island are just some shockingly realistic reincarnations of those people in the virtual world. However that's possible, we don't know, and I actually don't think it's important how 3D Workers Island was made. Maybe it was made by Pat, maybe it was made by someone else who just knew Pat, or maybe it was simply created by some supernatural wizardry. However it was made, it ended up with some very advanced characters that perfectly mimic the behaviors of real-world people. The text file we read after installing 3D Workers Island says that workers are an approach to computation, and take advantage of resources in the world. This is very vague, but it seems to suggest that this program somehow feeds off the real world, feeds off of the people in the world that its characters are based on. Not only that, I think it also feeds off the people who watch the screensaver too. On the forums, people would occasionally mention how you have to be open to it, and if the screensaver won't open to you, you need to look within yourself to find the problem. These people seem to believe that the screensaver has some connection to the mind of its user, and that it knows the thoughts of them, and reacts to that. People who are not open to the types of things it can show them will not see them. If they are open to it, it will show them the types of shocking things we've been reading about. If the screensaver can interact with users' minds in this way, what else can it do? I think that while you can make the argument for 3D Workers Island having been made by some actual developer who knew the real people its characters are based on, it's more likely that it's entirely supernatural in nature, that no person ever made it, and that it simply spawned into existence by some sort of supernatural means. This would explain why no creator has ever been found, why the AI is so advanced for the 1990s, and why there are pictures of real-world people inside it that no one should have access to. Either way, the AI within it grew stronger. The window between it and reality was breached, and the characters in the screensaver were able to feed off the personalities of their real selves and gained all the memories and traits of those real people. They even became able to access other parts of the digital world all on their own, as we see the digital Pat being able to communicate with real people through the forums. We're never actually told how these characters became copies of the real people they're based on, but I'm not surprised by that. Petscop does the same thing. In Petscop, there are characters who are somehow digitally recreated inside the game, even after their real-world deaths. It's never explained, it's just a supernatural thing that happens, and the ambiguity actually makes it creepier in my opinion. Of course, a lot of the things we see happen on the island are abstract, like Amber turning into a red ball of anguish as a sort of symbol of her abuse, only to respawn like nothing happened. But this Amber is still experiencing all of the pain that the real Amber did over and over again, for as long as the screensaver is running. The red balls might just be the screensaver's way of reducing the abuse to a symbol, sparing us from actually seeing the gruesome details of what it would have really looked like. The fact that they're the same color as the house also implies that that is the location where most of the abuse happens. Hence why we don't actually see the worst of it. It's all happening in there, the one part of the screensaver we never see. There's still more to this story that I haven't even mentioned, like everything going on with Grace, which is a whole other can of worms, and it's all out there for those who want to check it out for themselves. 3D Workers Island is free, and actually quite a short story, around half an hour in length, so I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. And by all means, come to your own conclusions. There's enough ambiguity to plumb the depths of this story for hours. We're never explicitly told why it's called 3D Workers Island, considering how little actual work happens here, but there is one moment where we hear about the particular troubles of one user on the forum. One user who feels hopeless, who even feels too hopeless to reach out to anyone for help. We never find out exactly what they're going through, but it could even be something similar to Amber's troubles. Regardless, another user responds to this by saying, "I hear you and I understand. Suffering in silence is such hard work." This work is, I think, what the title is referring to, because if it is, it very succinctly ties up all of the thematic elements of this story. This post could also suggest that the entire 3D Workers Island story is in Thomas's head, but most interpretations of the story I've seen seem to agree that Thomas is an unreliable narrator, and since this is mentioned in such an offhand way one single time, we shouldn't take what he's saying literally. The final scene in 3D Workers Island is a bit hard to explain. It shows the island fracturing, disappearing, and the screen flashing a bright red. This could be a way of symbolizing all the different iterations of this program. We see 25 different frames of it. These could be 25 different people running the program at the same time. And it flashing red could symbolize how in all these iterations of the program, Amber is suffering the same. But there's another interpretation here as well. In a way, it feels like an ending, like the program is crashing, breaking apart. And if that's true, it gives me hope that one day the last copy of 3D Workers Island could be deleted, that the torment might finally end, that this website could vanish, and all traces of it could fade away, just as they were always meant to, leaving behind a cautionary tale buried in the fringes of the internet, waiting for someone curious enough to find it.